Welcome to the webinar on getting the best of Power BI using Azure Stack. We are from Indium Software, a 2-decade experience company specialized in digital QA and gaming services. The digital division of Indium specializes in big data, analytics, blockchain, and related product development. I am Magesh, AVP Analytics with Indium, and I have around 12 years of experience in analytics. Joining me is Ashish, practice head of analytics. He has been in the industry for more than 6 years. For the next 30 40 minutes, we will be discussing about getting the best of Power BI using Azure Stack. We will also demonstrate a few cases and we will follow up with the question answer session. So you can send your questions in the webinar chat box. Okay, so today's agenda will give a short intro about Power BI. We'll discuss about the USPs of Power BI, components of Power BI, how Azure Stack adds value to the BI architecture when it's combined with Power BI. How DAX and Power BI is so powerful. What are the embedding options available? What are the best practices? And we'll follow up with some of the case studies and demonstration of Power BI. Getting into the meat. So here we have Gartner's Magic Quadrant, which actually tells about different visualization tools, how they are rated and how they are placed in different parts of the quadrant. So it's on two axes, the company's ability to execute and the completeness of the vision. So if you see, you have a lot of players in the market, but you can distinctly see that Microsoft is in the leader segment. It's competing with someone like Tableau, ThoughtSpot, Click. As you can see, these are some of the industrial leading names. But Microsoft has been a leader in this quadrant for around 12 consecutive years. So that speaks volume about the company and the platform they have. So you can see that it's Microsoft or not necessarily Power BI because it's a stack of tools. You have Power BI, you have the Azure Stack, and its allied tools, which makes it more powerful and which places it in the leaders quadrant for consistently 12 years. So if you see even on the right hand side, the graph, the number of websites implementing or using Power BI has been in the ascent in 2019. It's pretty much competing with Tableau and Click, and but you can see that Power BI has been on the ascending slope. So these are the different Power BI products available. There are different cases of using Power BI. There are business users, there are developers, there are enterprises. So which product to use, there is always a confusion. So usually people start with Power BI desktop. It's a standalone installation and analyst can use it to play around with his data, a small amount of data he is having, and then we can author a dashboard. But the problem is when he has to share the dashboard with others, that is where the problem sets in with Power BI desktop. So you can use to a product like Power BI Pro, which comes at a nominal fee of $10 per month. You can share the dashboard as a URL so that other users can view it. Uh, so that is where the next product comes in, Power BI Pro. And you have enterprises. So when the data size increases and if you want to deploy the dashboard on premises or on cloud, that is where Power BI Premium sets in. So you have an on-premise server and you want to deploy your dashboard and spread it or distribute to multiple users, somewhere around 500 users, 1,000 users. The number of users viewing the dashboard might be huge. That is where the Power BI Premium products comes over as handy. Then you have Power BI mobile app as well, so you can share the dashboard for the users in Power BI mobile app platform. Then there are other products like Power BI Embedded. Power BI Embedded is particularly suited for when there is a case of embedding your dashboard inside a website, or you have an inbuilt application where you want to have the Power BI visuals inside your application. That is where Power BI Embedded product comes into play. It's an advanced product where embedding as a service is available. Then you have Power BI Report Server. So you have an on-premise server to deploy dashboards specifically designed for consuming reports. Power BI Report Server comes in. It's a supplementary product with Power BI Premium as well. So these are the different Power BI products available. Mostly enterprises would be preferring a Power BI Premium or a Power BI Pro product. Coming on to the USPs of Power BI, there are multiple features of Power BI, but to pinpoint few, as you can see, it's a self-serve and a drag and drop BI. Minimal coding is required. People who are pretty much comfortable with Office Suite products, they would be able to use Power BI. Then it has multiple connectivity options. So if you have some services like Google Analytics, Salesforce, MailChimp, SAP, Facebook, where you have all your data available and you want to visualize those data, then there is a ready-made there are ready-made connectors available in Power BI. Uh, there are also different connectors to Azure DBs and non-Azure DBs, other SQL-based DBs. So connectivity problems are pretty much limited in Power BI. I mean, the problems are pretty much limited in Power BI if when it comes to connecting to other databases. Then there is also an embedding option. Uh, Dashboards can be published and they can be shared as URL. There are multiple options available. One is you can embed it as an iframe, or you have embedded Power BI product as a, individual product too for doing the embedding. Uh, One of the distinctive USP is Cortana voice integration. Nowadays, many operating systems have different virtual assistants. So when you want to use when you want to have some queries, you can use Cortana directly without opening the Power BI application. So directly you can dictate what is the question and the answers would pop out straight away, invoking the Power BI product. As we can see, the license fee is pretty much nominal. Anyone can start with a free standalone application, then they can move on to Power BI Pro and then move on to Power BI Premium. Coming to the anatomy, so you have a backend, you have a Power BI gateway and a relationship manager. Relationship managers, basically you have different tables connected. If you want to model the data, so you can have a relationship manager connecting different tables and creating multiple columns and measures to visualize the dashboard, visualize the charts and reports. Then you have Power BI Gateway. That is basically to when you have databases which are located on premises, then you need a Power BI Gateway as a software that helps in having secure connection and passing on the data from your on-premise databases to Power BI dashboards. The second component is visuals. So you have tables and charts. There are multiple charts available, and there's also an app marketplace where you can get multiple visuals, custom visuals. Then there are calculations. It's based on M language, so complex expressions can be written. DAX is data analysis expression, so you can write complex expression to find calculated measures, calculated columns. Then the most interesting part is the cross tooling. So if you have written some code in R or Python and you have done some processing, routine in R or Python, that can be embedded or called from Power BI's base.
Continuing the discussion that Magesh has started around Power BI and how we can get the best of Power BI using Azure Stack. So right now you're looking at a sample BI architecture without using Azure Stack. So we are using just the Power BI from the Azure Stack, and everything else is a mishmash of popular open source tools or otherwise. So let's see how that pans up. So first you have the data sources. It can be anything. It can be a cloud application like Salesforce. It can be SAP, SurveyMonkey, MailChimp, any CRM product, any ERP product, or it can be any other data source from where we are pulling. It can be Excel files. It can be some legacy data warehouse. So data source can be anything, and then from there you have to extract data. And for this you can use any of the popular tools like NiFi is a UI based tool where you can create the templates for doing all the ETL. So you can use NiFi, you can use Tailend, There are plenty of tools available for doing this job. You can even do it in Python or any other scripting language and automate that as well. And once you have that in place, you can push that data to a better database, which are more analytical database. So something like Postgres, and then from Postgres to Amazon Redshift, depending on your requirement and what kind of usage you are making further down the line. So you see these arrows from Postgres. You can R or Python can fetch data from Postgres, and it is a double-headed arrow. That means the calculations can also be sent back to Postgres. So suppose you run some model in R and Python and you need to store the results, so you can send them back to Postgres or Amazon Redshift. Again, depending on your requirement, and the data can move within themselves also. Mostly Redshift is used as a warehouse, and Postgres as the analytical database. So depending on what is needed more for the live, so there's a concept of live, hot, and cold path as well. The more used ones are kept in hot path, and the ones used very rarely are kept in cold path. So hot one would be kept in Postgres, a cold one in Amazon Redshift. And so then there is a semantic model where you have the business logic, and so this is where the relationship manager that Magesh was talking about uh, uh, would fit in this semantic model. In the Power BI, you do all that in relationship manager. You do the connections between the tables, join between the tables, relationship modeling, and writing the business logic using queries. That is the semantic model piece, and you can also specify who can access, who cannot access. So that is security and data access. So one interesting thing here is interesting distinction here is Power BI Gateway. So if you don't use Azure Stack, and by Stack I mean either the cloud or mostly the database. If it is not a Azure supported database, then you need to have a Power BI Gateway. Gateway is like a connector, like you have JDBC, ODBC connectors to connect to applications. So this is the counterpart of that for Azure and Power BI. So if you don't have Azure Stack database, then you need to install this Power BI Gateway, and that puts some limitations in terms of number of refreshes that you can do on the application. So this is your without Azure Stack. So going to the with Azure, so pretty much the same model, the flow is same, but the tools have been replaced. So in place of NiFi, there is Data Factory, which performs the same kind of job. In place of Kafka, which can be used for streaming data, we have Azure Event Hub, used to um, which is used to extract streaming data. Suppose we will show you show you a demo where we have the streaming data used in Power BI. So in without Azure Stack, you will use Kafka or Apache Spark. Here you have to use Azure Event Hub, and then from Azure Event Hub it goes to Stream Analytics, and then from Stream Analytics it goes to Power BI. So that is the real time path. So this will keep on updating real time, but and then there is obviously a batch mode. So in real time you can only do so much. It is just to get a sense of what is going on in last 10 minutes, last 30 minutes, and so on. But you always want to store that data and do batch analysis also. So for batch analysis, you go this route, which is from Azure Data Factory. You push this to Azure Blob Storage, which is like hub for unstructured data. You can store it in multiple formats, and from blob storage you can push it to SQL data warehouse, which is the most used database in the Azure Stack. So again, these can be compared to Redshift and Postgres, and you have the similar uh, arrows, similar pointing arrows, double-headed arrows. Here, R and Python have been replaced by Azure ML Studio, which is a UI-based tool for performing ML in Azure Stack. So again, from Azure, ML calculations can be sent back to the database so that it can be used by Power BI. So this is the batch mode, and this is the streaming, and this is the hot and cold path I was talking about. Real time is hot path, and batch mode is the cold path. So this is the difference. The architecture remains the same. Tools change, and here we go to the, and also I just forgot to mention about the um, give me a second, the Docker and Azure VM. So these are just to highlight that where on what infrastructure they are sitting. So mostly when you are not on Azure stack, most likely you might have to use Docker to package things in that environment, and all of that sits in the Azure VM. If it is Azure Stack, and it can sit in AWS or any other cloud provider if it is not on Azure Stack. So now moving to the benefits. So what are the benefits of doing it with Azure Stack? So one of the main, as I explained, is data refresh. So you don't need to install any gateway if you are doing it with Azure Stack. If you use a Azure SQL data warehouse, you don't need any gateway installed, and gateway comes with its own restrictions. You have to install it, you have to add users. It puts a restriction on number of refreshes that you can do in a day. So gateway is more, without gateway is more real time. So that is one benefit. Security wise, you can easily install SSL certificates if it is on Azure Stack. Here by Azure Stack, I mean the cloud. If cloud is Azure and a Windows VM, then installing SSL certificates for Power BI dashboards is very easy. And then cost wise, so here, you can say Azure is mostly, uh, every component comes at its own cost, but they bring their own value with them. So you have to make a choice, but they come at a cost, but they bring all the value. That is cost wise. And then ML visualizations. So for ML visualizations, Azure ML Studio is a very powerful tool, and it has very good connectivity and integration options with the Azure SQL Server data warehouse, and that has good integration with the Power BI. So all of that integration makes it quite real time. And dev time, as you know, it is a drag and drop self-serve. So making the charts is not, it doesn't take a lot of time, and dev time is minimal. And integration, if all the tools, database, the ingestion tools, ETL tools are all from Azure Stack, the cloud as well, then integration becomes a cakewalk, and it takes really less time.
So moving on to the next session, we have a data analysis expression in Power BI, which forms an integral part in the visualization tool because it's just not about visualizing the charts and creation of reports, but creation of new columns, measures, aggregates, which is where the data analysis expression component scores. So you can roughly translate this DAX as Excel functions, but they are more dynamic and powerful. We'll explain with a couple of cases. Just to take a simple case like lookup, so you use a VLOOKUP in Excel. So you do a VLOOKUP of a particular value in a particular table, and then fetch a three or four a column which is three or four columns or fields away from the original searched value. So similar to that, we have in DAX, in Power BI, we have lookup. So you have a column value to be fetched, the table to search, and the value to be searched. So this is one example. So it's basically a creation of a new column. We have given this example. Uh, Moving on, this is a slightly complicated example in the DAX. So you have a filter and calculate way of doing a DAX. So this is just like a snippet of code. It's similar to a macro which is written in Excel. Or a VBM in VBA. So if you want to find out sum of sales, which is an aggregate based on region, a measure you want to create. So you can do it in DAX. So it's like a few lines of code there. So you can declare a variable to fetch the selected region. For example, if somebody has selected North, and if you want to find out sales of North, then selected value is available in the field, and using that field you can do a summation with the filter expression as well as the sum expression. So some lines of code can be combined and measure can be created. So this is another example. The first example was a calculated column. This is a calculated measure. Following up, we have also a conditional formatting. So DAX is not necessarily a few lines of code, but within the drag and drop interface itself. For example, if you want to display the title in a colorful way. For example, if you want to indicate the title of the chart in red if it's in the descending in the degrowth phase, or if it's in the growth phase, if you want to display it in green color, you can write those codes within the drag and drop interface. So this is an example of changing the font color of the title itself. If the value is, if the sales value is more than this threshold, make it into green. Otherwise, make it into a danger one like red. Or if it's in this threshold, make it as an amber color. These are few other examples. So you can create lots of date and time functions. You can create logical functions, statistical functions. So the nested if condition is a logical condition, just like nested if within Excel. Uh, so uh, uh, so this is if you want, if you take an example of let's say an order priority field within a table called orders. If that order priority is more than 5 or equal to 5, make it as critical. If it's 0 or less than 0, less than 1, make it as not specified. And if it's in the intermediate, you make it high or medium or low. So these are nested if condition. This is similar to again an Excel expression. And you have one more example of a weekday. That is also a date time function. Then you have some complex DAX like data aggregation, where you can find out the difference between the start date and end date. So these are some of the flavors of DAX available. You can create more complicated expression. Just to put it in a nutshell, it's almost like an Excel expression or VBA macros.
So sharing is an important part of after creating. So how does the user consume the dashboard that we have created? So one of the basic ways a user consumes is that you share it as a PBIX file. But for that, the requirement is that the user should also have Power BI desktop installed on their computer. So that's not very convenient. And another is that you can share the URL, but that person every time needs to log in with that particular login, developer login, which has been used to create that dashboard. So that is little convenient, but not that much. So embedding is the option which is used the most. So suppose you have a website, you have a portal application where you want to embed this. Suppose you have a website and you want to show every internal website, and you want to show a dashboard to all your employees. So for these kind of options, the embedding becomes a must. So for embedding, there are two options. One is embedding dashboard as a iframe. So suppose you have a JavaScript, a portal which is developed in JavaScript, Node and Angular JS, and you want to integrate your dashboard, Power BI dashboard in that. So then you can use that as a do that as an iframe embedding. So you can just take the dashboard URL and embed it as a in the iframe parameter of your HTML code, and that requires to follow certain steps. So we actually did that for a client. We have done that for multiple clients, and we have actually written it as a blog. So we will send you this presentation, and you can read this in detail how to do that. Another option is, and it doesn't require any other tool. It's JavaScript. You can do it with JavaScript and follow certain steps. You only need to have a Power BI Pro account. And another is Power BI embedded. So this is manual work. You need to have a person who knows Angular or Node, probably the person who developed the portal for you. They can do it. And this is option 2, which is Power BI embedded. So this is one of the products which is offered by Power BI, and it is a managed one. It is embedding as a service. So you just tell them, tell Power BI that we want this embedded somewhere. So they embed it for you, and it is a little costly service, but because they manage it for you, they take care of all the security, and they have a elastic costing. Like you can switch it on and off on an hourly basis. So it is very elastic that way, and a lot of people use it to avoid the hassle of the embedding. So the best practices, so we just thought we will just give some of the best practices from our experience with developing Power BI architectures and solutions for multiple clients. So first is that we should try to maintain ecosystem consistency across tools. And by that we mean that, okay, if it is a open source kind of ecosystem, so all the tools in the pipeline should be from that ecosystem, like NiFi, Postgres, Shiny. They are from the open source ecosystem, so they gel well together. And then enterprise ecosystem has all the Azure ecosystem tools like Data Factory for ETL, SQL Data Warehouse for database, and Azure ML Studio for machine learning, and Power BI for visualizing the results. So we have seen that ecosystem, maintaining the ecosystem gives the best result in terms of latency, speed, security, performance. So that is our first suggestion. Second is to clean up. Second is about the optimizing the data model. So one is around maintaining a very sanitized database. You keep only the columns or the data that is required, which are used frequently, or use a columnar database so that only the columns which are queried are loaded, not all the data that is, so that has an implication on the performance. Then you don't run queries on columns which have high cardinality, like number of rows are really high. So be careful with those, or use some specialized algorithm which make these calculations faster. Test DAX queries for your time complexity before putting them in production, and keep multi-tenancy in view, because many of dashboards require multi-tenancy later. So always keep that in mind while designing your data model. Some designing suggestions is always keep reports light on visuals. It should not be very giddy and too verbose. And also color palette, font, padding space. It's always a good idea to develop it upfront with a designer. What kind of font you want, what kind of padding space. So prototype helps. Otherwise, it keeps going back and forth. And for data gateway, use it in enterprise mode. Mostly don't not in personal mode. Personal mode is good when you are developing it, but when you are sharing it with the world, change it to enterprise mode. And uh, um, these are the configurations. Like you should have more cores because it is little intensive. It takes care of incoming queries and outgoing data, and it queues a lot of requests. So it needs to have good computing power where this gateway is installed. And the different components of the architecture needs to stay in the servers which are placed very close by. If possible, they can remain in the same cluster, same server as well. But it is always a good practice to distribute them, like database on one, and Power BI on some other server, the application on some other server. Always a good practice, but they should be located nearby both the machines and not very far away. So now we'll go into some demos. This is as we were talking about the streaming dashboard on streaming data. So this is one example that we have created on streaming data. So you see these charts are getting refreshed in almost real time, so this is some transaction data. You see this is getting updated every 1 or 2 seconds. And so this is so the architecture behind this is that there is a database, and which is generating data in this fashion at this frequency, and we are pulling it via Event Hub, and passing that through Azure Streaming Analytics, and then that data is being passed to Power BI. And so Azure Streaming Analytics can directly connect to Power BI. So you need to have a Azure account as well as a Power BI Pro account to be able to do that. And it is actually one of the architecture that we showed earlier, was Event Hub to Azure Streaming Analytics, and to Power BI.
Okay, the next demo is on scenario analysis, or popularly known as what if analysis. So let's say you have a business and you have different metrics like your actual revenue, and you have number of active users, and the active users are split into free users and paying users. So you have a percentage of your paying users. So assume that these are your four metrics available, or you want to find out what would be the impact to the revenue when you change some of the parameters. So the parameters here are set up something like in how much your active users might increase, how your revenue will increase, and how your paying users composition will increase. So the metric we are trying to find out here is ARPU, which is average revenue per user. So based on these three parameters, you want to find out what is the impact on the ARPU. So this is a business question. Let's say the marketing wants to find out for different scenarios. So they can create this a dashboard, or they can create this visual where they can set up these three parameters, and a business user can play with these three parameters to find out what would be the impact for ARPU. So let's say the ARPU is somewhere around 11.1 dollars per user, and so let's say the active users, it increases something by 20 percentage, and your revenue increases something like let's say 16 percentage, and let's say your paying users are also, it just moves on to somewhere around for somewhere, let's say 32 percentage. What would be the impact to the ARPU? That is the question the marketing wants to know. In that case, you would be able to visualize it. For example, the earlier ARPU was 11.1, and now it has moved on to $19.2. So this is one scenario, and in a meeting they might think that, okay, the active users might increase from 20 to 40 percentage, my revenue would have probably dipped, and my paying users would have remained constant. It wouldn't have changed. What would be the impact to my ARPU? So that's a question they might want to know. So here you can see that it has dipped from 11.1 to 9.2. So there are multiple scenarios a business user can play with. He can also move to you can play with the filters as well to find out what is the actual revenue with the, and compare it with your uh, what if scenario metric. So this is another demo we wanted to show, that you can play with different parameters, find out different scenarios and answers to them. We'll move on to the third demo. Okay, this is a Q&A cards for Power BI. So most of the time, what happens is you have a Power BI uh, dashboard open, and you're searching between different tabulations and between different charts and reports. Sometimes you are not able to find out the piece of information you are looking at, right? So in that case, you can use your natural language. You can type out the question directly. There is a feature in Power BI called Q&A, where you can directly type out what you want, and it would give the corresponding answer. For example, these are some of the charts we have created: the sales value, the count of parts, and let's say the quantity by different segments. So let's say a business user wants to find out what is the value for CT, let's say Arvin, right? So it would directly pop out the answer for that. And let's try out some more questions. For example, if you want to find out uh, by segment, what are the values, right? So these are the different segments available, right? MUV, HUV, LCV. So if you want to find out what are the values or what are the sales value for different segments, directly you get the answer, right? You get the answer in a bar. And if you want it by column, I can actually put it straight away and transfer it into a column. You can also go on to the show data available, which will throw up the values by different segments. You can play with different questions. For example, segment value by city. It would throw up by city, what are the different segment values, and I want it by, like, let's say I want it by stacked column. I just type it out and straight away it gives the answer. A person would want to find it out by he wants to visualize this one rather as a 100% stacked column rather than stacked column. So it just throws up 100% stacked column. So within a city, how the different segments are distributed. So there are multiple things you can do it here. You just type out the question instead of putting what is the segment value. You can directly put on the phrase something like segment value, or let's try out one more. Probably we can try out something like top 10 parts. Let's say if this answers this one, 10 part numbers. So yeah, it answers. So if you want to find out the top 10 part numbers within a city called Arvin, it also filters that. So you can type out different questions in your natural language, and Power BI pulls out the answers directly into the dashboard. So instead of switching between the tabulations, searching between the different charts and reports, straight away type the question and get the answer. So we'll move on to the fourth demo, which is the Cortana integration.
We get it. Launching Power BI's heavy application is cumbersome, especially if you just need something quick during a meeting, or if you check your dashboards frequently during the day, or maybe you have too many dashboards to just leave open. These are some of the reasons why Cortana's Power BI functionality helps you fetch exactly what you're looking for straight from your desktop. Show me revenue distribution.
I found revenue distribution.
Cortana makes all your dashboards available instantly. They're live, so feel free to interact with them and drill down to what you're looking for. Cortana can even help you compare specific things by filtering out the noise. Show me revenue distribution for both segments, tractor and car.
I found revenue distribution for segment tractor or car.
You can also ask Cortana to mine your data for more specific requests. Show me inventory for the state of California for Q4 for the year 2018.
I found inventory for state that share values are in California, quarter equals 4, and year in 2018.
Cortana can make business intelligence more accessible to more people in your organization. Contact us for more.
We have a few questions, so we'll answer that questions quickly. There's the first question which says that when to use Power BI Pro and when to use Power BI Premium.
So yeah, we have got this question, when to use Power BI Pro and when to use Power BI Premium. Yeah, so that depends on how many reports that you are running, how many people are there who are developing, and how many eyes that are looking at the reports. So when it is, so ideally for security's sake, and so sometimes you have a situation like you cannot publish, you should not be publishing more than one dashboards from one account. Suppose you have a case like you want to have a separate dashboard for each employee, and one employee should not see the details of the other employee. So ideally multi-tenancy should have been ideal for those kind of scenarios, but if you don't have, and you not need to go by different licenses. So if you have a large employee base, let's say more than 50 people or 100 people, then you should definitely consider going to premium. And it also depends on number of dashboards you are making. If it is more than 20 dashboards, 30 dashboards, then you should definitely consider Power BI Premium. But if it is just one person, it's a small company, less number of reports, less users, then you can make do with Power BI Pro as well. Another question that we have is about how R and Python can be integrated with Power BI. Yeah, so there are two ways. One is it is like a drag and drop box. You can drag and drop and that box and put your Python or R script there, and it can run on your data, and you can do some cleaning, you can create a new column, you can perform some sample calculation manipulation and store it in one of the tables as a new column, or you can store it as a calculated measure and it can be used in one of the reports. So that is one way. Another way is when you are using Azure ML Studio, there as well, you can drag and drop R and Python script, and that can be fed into Power BI.
Okay, due to shortage of time, we are not taking much questions, but we'll definitely answer the questions in a detailed manner via some other means by email. So Indium has also partnered with Microsoft. It's a silver analytics partner for Azure. What we get through that is we get technology expertise on the Azure stack directly from Microsoft. We get priority access to the latest updates and features on any components or any new products on the Azure technology stack. We also have direct access to Microsoft technical support. So any critical issue comes over, we get preferential access to solve those problems. And they also provide us with some domain experts and a few areas in which we can provide our analytics expertise. They help us with some of the different analytic solutions available across different domains. So these are some of the help we get through this partnership, and we pass those benefits to our clients. Hope that you had a productive session today on the webinar. So that ends out the session. Thank you all for attending the webinar session. We do provide a range of analytics services. And for more information on our analytics services, you can check our Indium software. These are some of the offices we have. You can write to us at sales@indiumsoftware.com and to info@indiumsoftware.com.